Okay, so now we're going into the basics of coloration. Um, Now, a lot of people for color will use, this is where I really differ from a lot of photo manipulators. Well, I guess in the last step I did as well. But I also differ here in that I don't lift textures and colors from photos of animals and apply them to the skin. Instead, I manipulate the skin to look like the textures of the animals. Um, and the first step of that is changing the coloration. And in this step, we're going to learn about layer masks, which are super cool. And I learned about from Something Wild, so you have him to thank for this section. Um, and to begin with that, we are going to get all of the layers that we want to color. So these ones. Um, those will be the only ones visible, so we made the pants invisible. Got it? Great. What we're going to do is select one of those layers, go up to Layer, and click Merge Visible. So now you've got all of that on one single layer. I'm going to save it again as another file because I want to keep those layers separate just in case I need them. All right, so we've got all of this as one layer. What we're going to do is we are going to create the basic color of the caribou fur. Because once we change the skin color, we can go in and use smudge, burn, and dodge to create a basic fur texture, and then we can use special brushes to go in and make it look a little bit more fur-like. Okay, so first step, we're going to take this layer, we'll just name that body. We're going to duplicate it 3 times. Body copy, body copy 2, body copy 3. What we're doing here is we're going to make the first body copy invisible. I like keeping the original layer around just in case I need it. We're creating different layers for different colors in the reindeer's color pattern. So let's name the lowest one white. Let's name the middle one brown. Let's name the highest one like dark gray or something. Those will be our colors. So let's make dark gray and brown invisible. And let's go to the white. All right, this is where we start messing with colors. So color tools, go up to Image, go to Adjustments. I'm going to teach you about some of these. Hue and Saturation. Okay, you'll notice that there are 3 bars here. Hue changes the color. So if you wanted to have a blue reindeer, there you go. Purple, etc. Okay, let's leave it on purple for the moment. Saturation changes how bright those colors are. You bring it all the way to the top, it's really brilliant. You bring it all the way down to the bottom, it reduces it to black and white. Let's have a pony caribou. Lightness, of course, changes how bright or how dark it is. We'll leave that on 0. If you go over here right next to where preview is, you can click colorize. And what that does is it changes everything to a particular color. Instead of kind of moving every color along a color wheel, it just changes everything to one color. So if you wanted big Macintosh style, reindeer, you would have something like that. Okay, so that's hue and saturation. If you click desaturate straight off, that's just black and white. That's as if you would to the saturation 0. If you go over to adjustments and click replace color, this one's pretty nice in certain circumstances once it loads. So it gives you what's called an eyedropper tool. It allows you to select a particular color, and you'll see where that color is in the image. So if I wanted to select the dark color, you can see that those are where the shadows are on that layer, or the hair, or the eye, or like the particular pink in the ear. You can see it's all over the place, but not very strong. Okay, great. And you can also add colors. So if you take the addition eyedropper, you could add another color. You could add the dark. Subtraction, you could subtract the dark. Okay, so we're going to keep this pink. And this allows you to mess with the saturation and hue of that particular color. So, okay, that's fuzziness is just kind of like, it's kind of like the tolerance one on the magic wand. It allows you to select different colors that differ from the one that you already selected altogether. So let's reduce the fuzziness. So if you notice, reduced fuzziness, I selected, you might not be able to see it, but I selected the red in the ears. And so in the places where it's red, I just turned them to all be green. Let me up the saturation so you can see. So it just takes those areas of the color I selected and changes them. All right, so that's a useful one in some cases. You'll have to mess around with that. Otherwise, oh, levels. Okay, levels is pretty nice. So if you notice, you've got this kind of hump here, and you've got two little sliders. So this hump represents how much of each brightness there is on that layer. So if you notice, there's very little dark, there's some in the middle, and there's a lot more that's between middle and light. All right. So how this works is it changes what the darkest things, what the middlemost things, and what the lightest things are. So if you move this middle one over, it makes everything to the left of it darker. So now we've defined this as the new middle point, if that makes sense. If I move this over, it makes everything to the right of it lighter. So everything brighter than this is now white. If I move this over, it makes everything to the left of it blacker. Kind of shadows, midtones, and highlights, and you're changing the variables, the variant levels of them. Down here, this one means that you change what the darkest dark is and what the lightest light is. I find that that's useful in creating browns and various other things. But, okay, so that's a little basic go over with levels. So in order to create white, we're actually going to go in, Adjustment, and click Desaturate. Now it's black and white. But it's kind of gray. It doesn't look white. So we are going to go into Levels, and we're going to up the brightness of the midtones. Go ahead and keep the darks in there. We're going to up the brightness of the midtones. Now it actually looks white. Perfect. Okay, let's get the next layer, brown. or kind of tannish. So let's go into hue saturation. Let's click colorize. But instead of purple, we're going to go into kind of an orange range. So we've got a kind of brown there. Actually, I'm going to go into levels first. I'm going to reduce the highlights. So we end up with something that looks like that. And then we'll go into colorize. So you see we've got a little bit of tan there. Okay, great. Now let's go into the dark gray, which will be the least common. So we'll get desaturate again. Oh, no, I want to select dark gray. Desaturate. Let's make it dark instead. So we'll move this one over here. We'll reduce the highest light. Um, okay, and there we go. Now we get into layer masks, which are super fun. So you'd go up to layer, create layer mask. Let's do hide all because we don't want all that much dark gray. So you notice it kind of went invisible. So go over to the layers menu, and right now you've got the dark gray, which you can't see at all, and then this black box. Well, it's only black because this um the layer mask shows you how much of the layer you can see. When it's black, you can't see it. When it's white, you can. And so we're going to go to select a brush, and you'll notice that we have two color options over here, just white and black. We're going to select white because we want to see the dark gray. And we have it on opacity 23, flow 22, which is pretty good. Oops. So notice, what am I getting? You can now see the dark gray coming through. I'm going to up the opacity. Okay, great. Now let's do the same thing with brown, except we're going to click reveal all because we want more. So we're going to switch it to black, so we're going to blot out the things that we don't want to see. So we've got a somewhat motley colored caribou. I'm going to actually get rid of some of the dark gray, or make it at least not so evident. Not a husky after all. And let's actually make the dark gray a little darker. So we'll go in, make sure we select um, the dark gray. We'll go into adjustments, levels, make it a tad darker. There we go. Yeah, I'm going to make the brown a little darker too. Okay, so there we go. We've got some nice looking caribou colors all mixed. And so if you see over in the box, you see most of the dark gray you can't see, a lot of the brown you can see, and then the white is just underneath them, so it shows through. All right, so we've got the basic coloration there. Now we're going to go in and see a little bit about the basics of furring. All right, so let me save this. Um, what we want to do is now that we are finalized, this is what we want our layer masks to look like. We're going to go over here, right-click, click Apply Layer Mask. Right-click, click Apply Layer Mask. Great. Now we're going to click the top one, do Control-E, which means merge down, so you merge the layer that you've clicked with the one below it. Chink, chink. Now, this is all one layer, and you can see it if we go into, like, levels. Whoop, everything changes at the same time. Okay, now, what can we do with that? So right next to dodge, oh, and just so you know, the sponge tool that's with dodge and burn, it has two modes, desaturate and saturate. So either get a, like, make the colors more vibrant or make them less vibrant, all the way to black and white. And that's a nice thing where you can add a little variation in fur tones. You can make it a little more gray or a little less gray. And the flow is just how heavily that happens. But let's go over to smudge. Smudge is a tool that you have to use carefully, because if you use it poorly, it will make everything look smudgy. I like to use smudge to do the first bit of fur, especially around the edges. What I go down to is I go down to these spray paint brushes. There's one at 14, 24, 27. Let's click 27. And 27 pixels wide. And so the smudge tool basically allows you to smudge stuff. So if you notice, I can just like go around the edge of this guy and make it look fuzzy. That's exactly what we're going to do with it. I often use, to kind of fur the edges, I often use about 56% strength, or 60, because that allows it, depending on the length of the animal's fur, because that allows it to kind of drag for a bit. All right. Now we're going to run over this with the smudge tool. And always start at the farthest from what you're doing, at the farthermost back, and at the lowest level of fur. So we're going to start at this hand. We're just going to click and drag, make it look fuzzy. And notice this gets rid of the sharp edges, and it gets rid of a lot of the skin um, detail, which is really nice. And because we've done the coloration, notice it's picking up the variations in coloration as well. And it gets rid of the veins. A lot of photo manipulations look bad because they preserve all of the detail of the human skin under the fur. It's like, no, you wouldn't be able to see veins unless you're doing a horse or something else with really, really short, flat fur. But yeah, you shouldn't have hard edges. Make sure you make it act like fur too. Not just sticking out every which way, but sticking out in ways that it would stick out. Okay, now we've got a furry arm. Now, let's do the chest and the torso. Wish I could fast forward through this. If you're watching this and you want to, if you kind of get the picture, you can do just that. So remember, work from the outside to the highest levels. That way it looks like it's actually laying down properly instead of just kind of going every which way. I had to be careful because I didn't want to smudge that shadow. You can smudge over shadows, but shadows you rarely want to smudge because shadows don't smudge in real life. They stay where they are. So notice, this allows you to create a fur texture over the entire thing. It also allows you to get rid of the skin texture, which is really crucial. Even if you paste fur texture over, you still have to figure out how to get rid of the skin texture. Because if you can see the skin texture under the fur, skin texture, not just contours, then something's messed up. You can also use lighten That can allow you to get rid of shadows if you'd like. I didn't want that to be so dark, so I just used light on it a bit. I'll use this pectoral, so we'll make the edges fuzzy. And then the entire thing fuzzy. And make sure to change the size of your brush as you get closer. Otherwise, it'll look like the furs farther away are exactly the same size as the furs close by. You don't want that. And since reindeer have kind of fuzzy throats, I'm going to make the throat extra fuzzy. Okay. Okay, soon we will be done. And then we'll move on to the burning and dodging and what that has to do with fur. So notice I always started from the end of where the fur would go. How the I always do it how the fur lays. So I start with the lower layers first and work my way up. Gets rid of the straight lines. Okay, so now we've got a very fuzzy caribou. Let's hit the fuzz on the face, which should be shorter and finer than a lot of the fuzz, the rest of it. You don't necessarily want to fuzz the eyebrows, though. Let's make it a little less strong. That way it looks a little more. Makes the fur look shorter. Let's get the ears. Fuzz. Lots of fuzz. Okay, So now we have a very fuzzy reindeer, but he just looks smudgy. What we're going to do is we're going to take the burn tool, and we're going to select the same brush we used um, for the smudging. We're going to go to midtones because that's what we want to make darker. We're going to go to a low exposure, and we're going to go over particular parts of it. What this does is it makes the midtones a little darker, and so it adds depth to the fur. So it makes it look like there are layers and not just smudges. And we don't select highlights because we want the parts that are dark to get darker. That increases the layering effect. If we made the parts that are lighter get darker, it would make it look flatter, and we don't want that. And so you don't have to go over the entire thing, but definitely go over the parts that you want darker. Basically, it makes it look like there are actual hairs in there instead of just smudge lines. Okay. And the reason we don't use a round brush is because it doesn't create the appearance of lines. What's nice too about this brush is that once you've gone over it, there are already lines to get darker. And so every time you go over it again, those same lines get even darker. So it only reinforces the depth. And then if there are any big imbalances, you can go in with a round brush on a low hardness and kind of fix those like general imbalances in like tonality or shadow or whatever. Like I might want to make this arm look a little brighter overall. See, look, the ear's looking good already. Need to smudge this out. There we go. Okay, so now we've got the burning done. Let's go into the dodge. And with dodge, we want it on highlights because we want what's bright to get brighter. And since highlights can get so out of hand, we probably wanted it on an exposure of like 2 or 3. Again, select the same brush, and just go over everything again. It won't change much because you're going over things that, especially in this one, a lot of what you're going over is just midtones. There are very few highlights. But the highlights that it gets will become brighter, which is exactly what you want. Um, and notice, if you're doing really white stuff, you don't really want to go over the highlights too much because white is already basically all highlights. You'll probably want to do a lot more burning with midtones. If you're doing black, you want to do more highlights and less shadows because so much of it is already shadow. If I haven't said it before, a lot of this is just kind of getting a hang of what you're doing and what the tools do and what might be the best for your job. Of course, that's all art. But I just want to say that there isn't a particular technique that will do everything. I can't prescribe every. This is one reason why I think a video tutorial is the best for my style, because I can't prescribe every little tiny thing I do in a series of steps. Now the face with dodging. I'm not sure if I'll do the antlers today or if I'll do them another day, but okay, so we've got the basics. Let's just go in and fix some of the big discrepancies. So if you notice there's a little too much shadow here. Let's go to shadows and let's do dodge on a higher exposure. There we go. And we can do dodge on a higher exposure over on this arm too with shadow just to make it a little lighter overall. There we go. Great. So there we've got burn and dodge. All right, I'm going to start a new video now.